Welcome back, everybody. Just angle it back there. There we go. We're back with some more MMA. This week, we're going to open up, because there was no UFC last week, we're going to open up with Unified MMA 45. Then we're going to talk about The Ultimate Fighter Episode 5. And then we're going to take a short break. And then we're going to close it out, of course, with this week's UFC, which is UFC Vegas 56, I believe. Yeah. Volkov and Rosenstrike. So let's get it started with the Canadian MMA, Unified MMA 45. It was on Fight Pass. It was on last Friday, I believe. It was a great night. It really was. I mean, especially when there's no UFC on, it's nice to see something like this from the smaller promotions, I guess, especially Canadian ones. You know, you got to love the hometown people. And there were 3 title fights and then an amazing fight just before the title fights. I mean, seriously, great card. One of the best non-UFC ones I've ever seen, really. So let's get it started. The first one we saw was Harley King and Izzuddin Atmeh. That ended pretty early. I mean, that does happen a lot in the smaller promotions. Atmeh tried to set the pace early, walking into King, but that tends to not be a good strategy unless you're like absolutely unbelievable, because he got clipped right away and he was pushed into the fence. And after, a minute of a bit of a back and forth striking, King hit Izzuddin with... Oh, yeah, no. I was going to say, maybe I was wrong. I got the wrong person, but no. Izzuddin hit... he hit Izzuddin with a huge shot, but let him up again, likely realizing he had the edge on the feet. Why be on the ground when you know you've got the striking advantage? A few seconds later, King threw out another big one, dropped Atmeh again, this time jumped on him with the ground and pound, and that was it. A TKO in the very first round. After that, it was Jet Grande against... Actually, I think it might actually be Jet Grand, I heard on the broadcast. I would have assumed it was Grande, but, like Ariana Grande. I'm just going to call him Jet Grande because I like it better. But against Colton Boxall. And I had actually seen Mr. Grande actually at, I don't know if it was the last unified one or the one before that, but I've seen him fight before and he looked really, really good. So I kind of figured he was going to do fairly well in this one. Boxall made the first move, tried to bring the fight to the ground, but he was out-wrestled and Jet managed to get on top. The next couple minutes, pretty uneventful, Boxall just kind of grabbing Grande, trying to get the ref to stand the fight up. I mean, I hate when that happens. They just do the hooks there, just try and hold the guy on top down and wait for the ref to stand them up. You never like to see that. That's boring. But Grande easily locked up the round with all that control time. I mean, not a great strategy to just hold on. Like if maybe the ref isn't starting the fight on the feet after about 20, 30 seconds, probably just give up on the holding strategy and try and actually either get up or get something going, or else, you're going to find yourself in this situation where now you've lost the whole round because of the control time. Trying to use his size as an advantage, Boxall ran at Grande in the second round with some combos, but he was lit up by a couple of big shots and dragged down to the ground once again, with Grande landing some more big shots. It was really just another round of top control there. And regardless of what the analysts were saying during the fight, I don't know what they were talking about, to be honest. They kept saying, because Boxall is being more active on the bottom, he's somehow winning the fight. It's like, no, I'm sorry, no. But Grande clearly was winning that fight. I don't care what you say. I mean, he was on top and Boxall couldn't get anything going. That to me means that Grande was controlling the fight, controlling the action. Even though there wasn't necessarily much going on, he was the one shutting down everything that Boxall had. So to me, that means that you are controlling the fight, controlling the momentum. So you clearly won the round. And that was really the case throughout all three of the rounds. I scored at 30-27. One of the judges agreed 30-27, and two of them had it 29-28. I mean, there was a fairly close round in there, but still, with all that control time, it's like you got controlled. You clearly lost the round. I'm sorry. That's how I think of it. Some other people, have some different opinions, and that's why we keep having these issues with the scoring. But in this case, it didn't matter. It was clearly Jet that won the fight. Anyway, after that, Mac Larsen, Phil Angaroff ended in a submission in the second round, but for who? We'll get to that. Neither man really wanted to get things going early. Never mind. I take that back. The exact opposite. Neither man really wanted to feel things out. Both of them jumped straight into it with huge kicks and combos. They were doing pretty well, both of them, but thanks to Larsen's size, he was the one landing early, stumbling Angaroff a few times in the first couple minutes alone. Whoopsie, I hit my mic there. Finally, those strikes were a bit too much for Phil. He got dropped and Larsen took advantage, jumping on top of him. Angaroff had a fairly deep guillotine from the bottom, but Mac did get out of it, and he moved the fight back to the feet, maybe a little smarter if you're struggling with the guillotine there from the bottom, where he ended up dragging the fight to the ground once again with the confidence from winning the opening round, because Larsen clearly won that round. Larsen walked forward and got the striking going right away. After getting backed up into the fence, though, Angaroff switched it up and got some decent clinch work going. Took a while for Larsen to get out of the clinch, but he ended up escaping and taking Angaroff down once again. It was looking like Larsen was just going to ride out the rest of the round on top, get that round of control, go 2 rounds up. But after a mistake from Angaroff, Mac took his back and locked in a quick rear naked choke for the win there in the second round. So that was Mac Larsen getting the submission over Phil Angaroff. After that, it was actually, did that end up being my fight of the night? No, it was not, but it was close. It was a real good one. It did produce a bonus, though. Oh, of course it wasn't the fight of the night. What am I talking about? Now I remember the fight. It did get a blue bonus, though, and that was Eli Aronov fighting Mariusz Ksiazkiewicz. Yeah, that's one of the hardest names to pronounce. It really is. We know Mariusz from the Contender Series. If you watched the Contender Series, I think he was on maybe, I want to say a year and a half ago, somewhere around there. So fairly recent. And then he came back with a fantastic win. I think it was just a few months ago. I didn't write it down, but I saw that one too. He's so good. I think he was maybe 11-1 or something going into this. Eli Aronov, I believe either 4 or 5-0 going into this. So definitely did not have the record, but had the wrestling background. So we knew that Eli was going to go in with the wrestling, and Mariusz obviously was going to keep it on the feet. So how did that one turn out? Aronov came out hot, but whiffed on all of his strikes early. I mean, when you're fighting Mariusz, the striker, I mean, you kind of maybe expect that kind of thing. But from there, though, he got his wrestling going, pinning Mariusz to the fence, took him down. Mariusz was doing pretty well to get back up and get out of bad positions, but Aronov, I mean, he's such a good wrestler. He really is. He kept pinning him along the fence and grabbing some control time on the cards. Thanks to all that wrestling, the clinch work, and then the ground and pound. Aronov was clearly up after the opening round. And honestly, I might have even scored it 10-8, which is crazy to say because Mariusz is very, very good. So for him to get absolutely dominated like that, that really just tells you how good Eli really is. In the second round, Mariusz wasted no time, walked right up to Eli, smoked him with a big one, dropped him to the canvas. But that victory was sadly short-lived as he was reversed after jumping off of, on top of Aronov. Might have been slightly like an Oliveira kind of strategy. You get hit, knock down, wait for them to jump on you, and then sink in the hooks for the submission there. And that's actually exactly what happened. Mariusz did end up getting up again, but was quickly dragged down once again. It looked as though Eli was just going to smother him for another round on the cards there, but just as the round was closing up, he fought for a submission and forced Ksiazkiewicz to tap. And really, considering the fact that, Ksiazkiewicz really actually was probably going to get a second shot at either the Contender Series or the UFC in his next one, if he were to win this fight. You gotta probably imagine that Eli is probably going to take that spot instead, and we will probably see him on the Contender Series or in just straight in the UFC, because honestly, this guy is so good. So good. Again, to dominate Mariusz like that for 2 straight rounds and then finish him in the second with the submission. And really, Mariusz didn't get a whole lot going, except for, of course, that one knockdown there. But yeah, man. So for me, I gave Eli actually 2 bonuses. He got the submission of the night, of course. Doing that against somebody like Mariusz, incredible. But also for one of my 2, actually this time, most valuable fighter of the night. I had to give it 1 to Eli because, again, to be... What are you doing? Loki dropped a ball next to me. For Eli to be only, I didn't write it down. It was, like I said, it was either 4-0 or 5-0 now. I think he's 5-0 now, possibly. Actually, maybe even 6-0. I don't know. Good boy. Yeah. For him to do that to somebody who's 11-1 and who was just on the Contender Series like last year, to do all of that is, and he's pretty young too. So to do all that is absolutely incredible. So I'm sure we're going to see him either directly in the UFC or on the Contender Series. So yeah, I had to give him one of the most valuable fighter ones because that's just so impressive. And UFC audiences will surely see him at some point. The next one, the first of 3 title fights. This was actually the featherweight title fight that was next. That was Maged Hammo and Neal Anderson. This was actually a rematch. The first time, apparently, I didn't watch it. I didn't even really look it up, but I was listening to it on the broadcast about what they were saying about it. And this one went fairly similar. In the first one, apparently Anderson was doing pretty well against Hammo, but then Hammo turned it around and ended up getting the win. And I think that might have been how he got the belt in the first place. It was Hammo defending the belt here. The strategy for both men was pretty clear. Anderson was using his size and his length, trying to get the striking going, of course, and Hammo tried to get in close to get the wrestling going. The entire opening round, completely even to me. Both guys started off to let loose some combos, and they both landed some decent shots. If I had to pick one, I probably would have gone with Hammo in the first one, thanks to the extra activity and the extra bit of kicks, but it was super close. The second round, a little bit of a different story. Hammo was really struggling with Anderson's length, so really getting that striking going this time for Anderson. Hammo did land a couple more kicks and a couple of bigger strikes, But the majority of the round did seem to be controlled by Anderson. So it was probably 1-1 going into the third there. And the third round was dead even again. Both of them landed some combos. Very, very close. Just like the opening round. It was tough to say who grabbed it. But on this one, I might have actually leaned towards Anderson because he had a slightly bigger moment near the end of the round. But it was, again, super close. I was saying it was 2-1 Anderson, but it was very, very close there. Finally, after 3 rounds of that tight striking, one guy had a huge, huge moment. Anderson landed a bomb, an absolute bomb there. Dropped Hammo on his back and started to jump on top of him there. But amazingly, Hammo actually reversed it quickly, actually. Well, not too quickly, I guess, because of the ground and pound. But he reversed it, got the dominant position, and then out of nowhere, Hammo landed an absolute bomb himself, followed it up with a quick combo to drop Anderson on his back, and he finished the fight with a comeback victory there. And for me, that was my brawl of the night. It had the drama. It had the back and forth action. Hey, buddy. It had the back and forth action. Oh, is Loki trying to get up on my lap? Are you okay? Here, there you go. No? You're not going to come? He's silly. There we go. Okay. So yeah, that was the fight of the night for me. Hey, buddy. That was the fight of the night. And then we had, after that, the heavyweight title fight. And this one was Chris Larsen defending his belt against Grayson Wells. Before the fight ever even really started, it was pretty much, it was over already. Wells wanted to get some offense going, but was swiftly met with some huge, huge shots from Larsen. Wells dropped to the ground, and Larsen just let loose some explosive, thunderous ground and pound to end the fight in the very first 30 seconds of the fight. So incredible title defense there for Chris Larsen. But to be fair, this was one of those fights that you kind of see on the smaller promotions where it's a little bit one-sided, and it's not really anybody's fault. It's that the original opponent for Larsen pulled out, and Grayson Wells stepped in last minute. He doesn't really seem to fight all that often. I mean, he does coach, I believe they said, but, just not at the same level. And we saw that pretty clearly. So, it kind of sucks to see because, you don't want to see somebody get finished like that easily. And it's just a huge mismatch. But at the same time, I mean, everybody kind of wins out of it. Chris Larsen gets his belt back. They both get some money. They both get the exposure in the co-main event, I might add, in a heavyweight title fight in the unified MMA on Fight Pass, like I said. So, and then, it sucks for Wells. He gets finished in 30 seconds, but hey, like I said, he got the exposure, maybe, a little bit of that, and then he gets a little bit of money. So, I would say everybody wins in that situation. Especially since he wasn't expecting to even fight, I think, even 2 weeks ago. So for, that little preparation, all that, yeah, you got to respect that too. Now, in the main event, this was the one that everybody was looking forward to, of course. And it was the one that I was looking forward to because I've seen Ryan Ford fight now. I saw him, not in person. I saw him fight. I don't think it was it wasn't the last unified card. It was last year at some point. And it was after his 7-year layoff, and he came back and had an amazing win there. So in response to that, Unified gave him the title shot. This was the Super Welterweight title fight. I don't even know how much that is. Probably, I'm guessing I think it was 176. It's a weird number because welterweight is 171 or so. And then you've got middleweight at about 180, 181. So it seems a little weird to have a belt for that, but that aside, anyway, he deserved a title shot nonetheless. Of course, he's amazing. And he was going against Robert Hale in this one. Hale made the first move, landed a crisp shot early. From there, though, Ford started to catch up, landed a couple of big shots himself, stumbled Hale twice early in the opening round. I mean, his boxing is just so unbelievable. And that was evident here. Ford was just on a clearly different level. But Hale, Hale was doing fairly well. But I mean, again, it just wasn't really that close. Sadly for Hale, that was short-lived as Ford smoked him with some good ones, had him running around the entire cage, and dropped him to the ground with some more combos. From there, it seemed pretty inevitable that Ford was going to finish the fight. Jumped on top of Hale, never let him recover at all, let loose that ground and pound and forced the ref to stop in there, and had a little trash talk after towards Hale, because apparently Hale was talking all kinds of wild shit. And Ford just doesn't take that kind of stuff, especially since, he hasn't really lost all that much. I forget what his record is, but I want to say it's somewhere around, I want to say like 21-5 or 21-8 or 23-5, somewhere around there. So he's got a lot of experience and he's so good. So you got to respect that. I mean, especially with all of his accomplishments outside of MMA in the boxing world as well. I mean, you got to respect the stand-up skills, and Hale just did not do that. So that, of course, earned another bonus. That was KO of the night, because you got to love that kind of stuff. Also, it was just a great TKO win there. And I also gave him the other most valuable fighter bonus. I had to give out 2 this time, because you got to recognize the talent of the fighters in these smaller promotions. Like I said, Eli Aronov, very much the future, and you could easily see that he is definitely going to be in the UFC, or at least the Contender Series very soon, probably by the end of the year, to be honest. And then Ryan Ford, I mean, what can you say? I think he's 40. Oh, at 40. He's 40. He took 7 years off of MMA, which ended just whatever that was, 5-6 months ago. And still, he did it again, shut down an extremely cocky young fighter, because Hale was also pretty young, by the way. Well, not like really young, not like too young, like 2021. I think he was somewhere around 24, 25-ish. But yeah, so to shut somebody young down like that, somebody who's confident and decent, I mean, that's pretty great, especially at the age of 40. And to get a title now, to win the Super Welterweight title at that age, and after that 7-year layoff too. I mean, that's incredible. Just super athletic, incredible stand-up skills. And yeah, honestly, I think he's going to be holding on to that belt for a little bit at least. Unless, I mean, you're always going to see some wild up-and-coming contenders like we saw with Eli Aronov. But you got to imagine that, yeah, it would take somebody pretty special like that to beat Ryan Ford right now. I'd like to say that we could see him on the Contender Series or in the UFC, but historically speaking, the UFC hasn't really gone in that direction because he is 40. I hope they give him a chance. I think he had a chance before he took that break. I honestly don't know. Don't quote me on that. I didn't look it up myself, but I think I remember seeing before that he might have a very long time ago. I honestly can't remember though. So again, don't quote me on that. But, I'd like to see him get a shot on the Contender Series or something like that. But I just can't imagine the UFC being willing to do that when you've got so many younger people, especially like Eli Aronov. Who are you going to give that shot to? Are you going to give it to Eli Aronov, who's undefeated and just destroyed Mariusz? Or are you going to give it to somebody who's slightly older, who definitely still deserves it, but doesn't necessarily have that lengthy career ahead of them anymore? the UFC is probably going to go in the younger direction. And it kind of sucks to see, you know, it makes sense. I'm not disagreeing with it or arguing with it. It makes sense, especially from a monetary point of view. You know, you're going to make way more money out of Aronov than you are possibly with Ford. I mean, he does have the hype behind him, though, of course. Everybody loves Ryan Ford. But you don't have that lengthy career ahead of you anymore. That's really the problem there. So I hope they give him a chance eventually, Ryan Ford. But do I think they will? I'm not really sure. But that was it for Unified 45. Amazing night. Seriously, I mean, definitely recommend because there wasn't any UFC, you could have watched it. I was going to say if there wasn't any UFC this week, you could watch it too. But of course, we've got UFC not just this week, but for I've heard the next 10 weeks in a row. Holy smokes. Unbelievable. So before we take a quick break, we will talk about The Ultimate Fighter Season 30, Episode 5. Just a quick little recap of what we saw. Just in case you didn't want to watch it yourself, I'll let you in on what happened. So of course, last episode we saw the ladies again, and that's where sadly, I believe it was it Coates? Yeah, Coates had to pull out because of the weight cut. It was just too much, so she had to pull out, and Brogan injured her knee. So she was also pulled out of just that fight, not the entire show, just that fight. But Coates was removed completely from the show because of that. And instead, we saw the alternate, Laura Gallardo, who is now on Team Pena, come in. And then Team Nunes had the pick of who to fight. So they picked Laura Gallardo, the new alternate, of course, and Catherine Poprocki from Team Nunes. So that's what the matchup ended up being last week. And that ended up being Gallardo pretty much dominating for the 2 rounds and taking the win as the alternate. And she looked amazing. I think I honestly would not be surprised if she made the final of the show. She is very, very good. Probably the best fighter I've seen on the show yet. I really do think that. But this week we went back to the guys, the heavyweights, and we saw the number one pick of the show on Team Nunes, Eduardo Perez. And on the other side, the final pick of the show, and that was Team Pena, of course, and that was Bobby Maximus. Now, again, I said this last time, and I haven't seen all the Ultimate Fighter ones, so I obviously don't remember this. Plus, I would have been, I think, in elementary school at the actually definitely elementary school at the time. So, of course, I don't remember this, but Bobby Maximus was on the Ultimate Fighter all the way back in season two, all the way back in 2005 on Team Hughes. Sadly, he lost the opening bout of the show because he blew out his shoulder. So just a very unfortunate occurrence right there. But he was actually still given the chance and given a contract for the UFC, and he actually did win in his debut. So he still turned it around and got a win in the UFC. So that's impressive already. And he actually, to make it even more impressive, he got submission of the night in that debut. Way more impressive there. After that, though, he lost a couple, and from there he was cut from the UFC. And because he wanted to focus on his family, he actually did end up stopping MMA, and that was in 2009. That's right. Not only did he, he hasn't fought, and he did not fight since then. He has not fought since 2009, and just thought, hey, at the age of 43, he heard that TUF 30 was going to have heavyweights, and he decided, why not go for it? And you got to respect that. I mean, seriously. And I totally respect that. I mean, not looking good if you haven't fought since 2009. But I mean, when you've got the chance and, you know, your kids are grown up a little bit more, he's got 3 kids now. When the kids are grown up a little bit more, why not chase that dream again? Why not go for it? And that is exactly what he did. Yeah, so he figured that his life experience and his grappling would be a problem for Perez, because Perez is very much a striker, which is what they showed in his one. They didn't necessarily talk about him that much. All they really said was that he's pretty young, born in Mexico, moved to the States, trains at AKA, which is American Kickboxing, of course. Incredible gym. So you know he's going to be a good striker, especially. Well, actually, AKA has a lot of good wrestlers, ironically. But he is very much a striker. Anyway, what was I going to say here? What else did they say? Oh, and that, of course, Perez is also 4-1 in his pro career and was undefeated in a very lengthy amateur career. So a lot of fighting experience, especially recently. And I mean, really, all of those fights were within the time period that Bobby was off with his kids. So, I mean, you had to imagine that that was probably going to have, you know, it was going to be a little bit of a problem for Bobby Maximus there. The weigh-ins, Perez came in weighing at the limit of 266 pounds. Incredible. I'm always amazed when that happens. Just unbelievable that people are cutting down to make heavyweight. Unreal. While Maximus came in at a clean 237 pounds. Looked good. No flab really too much, especially at the age of 43. I mean, he looked incredible for 43. Just looking real good there. Now, the fight itself, the fight started off exactly the way Maximus wanted. Early takedown, straight to the mat. And excuse me. I think the team Nunes was probably starting to worry a little bit that their number one pick was going to be in a little bit of trouble. But Perez managed to get up back for a little bit, was actually pinned down to the fence and dragged right back down again. So again, not looking great for the number one pick there for a little bit. Bobby doing very well in the grappling, of course, but started to get busted open in the clinch. Perez started to get the elbows going and stuff in the clinch there, busted his nose open. As the round went on, that's where things started to shift. And that is where Perez started to gain the momentum, landed more strikes, just piling them up until Bobby found himself on the ground, getting pummeled by ground and pound there. Maximus just couldn't get anything going and continued to get rocked on the ground. And of course, the ref was forced to stop the fight there. You know, I mean, it sucks. It really sucks, of course, to see somebody with the story of Maximus, the background of Maximus, to get shut down like that so early in the competition. But he did say, thankfully, that he would not be quitting MMA just yet, and he wants to keep going. And honestly, I wouldn't really be all that surprised if Dana White even maybe gave him a shot on the Contender Series or something like that, because honestly, he did look decent, and he was winning the fight for the first couple minutes with his grappling. It's just that Perez was too good. And to be honest, I think he might have been the best heavyweight that we've seen so far. Usman was very, very good, but a little hesitant, whereas Perez, not so much. So I think Perez might be starting to look like a little bit of a front runner, I gotta say. It is pretty close, though. I would say those two are at the top for sure right now, but we'll see. We'll see as the show goes on, of course. But yeah, so I'm glad that he said he's not going to be quitting MMA and that he's going to keep going. That's what I wanted to hear, because I was a little worried, you know, because you think, oh, you know, he's 43. He wanted to give it a shot. This was kind of his last shot, maybe. This could be the end. But I'm very happy to see that he is not thinking that way. And he also owns a gym. So I would imagine he's going to get back in there, get to work, and get prepared, trying to get another fight. And maybe the Contender Series, or maybe he just goes somewhere else to get something going, maybe Bellator or something like that. I could see that. And he'd probably do pretty well there, to be honest. What was I going to say? But there's a reason that Perez was the number one pick. He's a dangerous matchup for anybody, and like I said, he could possibly be the front runner right now for me in the heavyweights. And of course, now next week we're going to be going back to the flyweights. We're still in the first round of fights here, not in the semifinals yet. I believe we've probably got there's 8. So I guess like 3 more episodes. No, 6, 7. Yeah, three more episodes, I guess, before we get into the semifinals there. And this one will be against between Juliana Miller from Team Pena and Claire Guthrie. And interestingly, they actually did fight before against each other, and Guthrie took that W. So, of course, next week we're going to see, can she do it again? I don't know. We'll see. We shall see. And that is it. We will take a short break. And then, of course, we will come back and talk about this week's UFC Vegas 56. So I will see you after this short break.
Allow me to introduce High Stick Vodka, a new way to celebrate victory. Gather around the glass with an award-winning, ultra-premium Canadian-made vodka. You probably won't listen when I say High Stick Vodka has a smooth, hard-hitting taste, or that it's developed in the birthplace of hockey. You won't listen when I say High Stick Vodka is a tribute to the game of hockey, or when I tell you it's distilled 4 times using Canada's purest mountain spring water to provide an authentic, remarkable flavor. But maybe you will listen when I say it comes in a f***ing hockey stick. Showcase your passion for hockey with our limited edition hand-blown hockey stick bottle. Whether you're celebrating victory or drinking to defeat, High Stick Vodka is better after every shot. Visit us at highstickvodka.com. It also comes in this regular bottle. Celebrate victory. Drink responsibly.
And we're back. UFC Vegas 56 we're going on about now. We'll start off with the main card, and that opens with the ladies, 2 veterans, Felice Herrig, and Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I spilled a lot of water on my shirt. Oh boy. What are we doing here? Okay. I need to catch myself in my notes here. Where are we? They actually have fought before. That was back in 2018, where Kowalkiewicz did win that fight. And I watched it back because that was actually one of Herrig's last fights. Oh yeah, because then since losing, okay, we'll talk about that later. I'm lost now. But since losing that fight, Herrig has lost in a decision to Watterson and brutally submitted, I might add, in the first round by Janji Doba. And that's it. Those are her only 2 fights she's had, or actually, yeah, since losing to Kowalkiewicz the first time. Thanks to that 3-fight losing streak, she hasn't won since her split decision victory over Courtney Casey in 2017. So she hasn't won in about 5 years now, and really has only had 3 fights since then. So hasn't really been all that active. Kowalkiewicz has also struggled quite a bit recently. 5 losses in a row now. And her last win actually came to Felice Herrig back in 2018. So I guess really they haven't, neither one of them has won, but Kowalkiewicz has been more active, and that is one of the difference makers in this one. I mean, you got to imagine too, Kowalkiewicz did win the first matchup, and if you watch it, she won it really by clinching and controlling Herrig like that, just controlling Herrig striking. And that's one kind of thing, that's one kind of strategy that doesn't necessarily change too much over time. It actually works quite well when you're moving on in your MMA career. That's why so many older fighters do that. Like Miller started doing that. Arlovsky is amazing at it now. That's exactly what he does. And that's what all of these successful UFC veterans do. And that's exactly, I'm assuming, what Kowalkiewicz is going to try and get going. And I really do think that she can do that. So you got to imagine that she's got the edge in here. And that's the way that I'm going. Kowalkiewicz by decision. And if you look at the odds, we haven't had to do this in a couple weeks now. Let's go over to Bet99. Got the banner right there. Let's get it started. Let's see. We've got Felice Herrig at -120 right now. I couldn't tell you why. I don't know why. I guess they're looking at the 5-fight losing streak. I don't know. Because again, you got to remember, Kowalkiewicz won the last one. By the way, also, Kowalkiewicz, since then, she actually also fought, she lost to Andrade, Watterson, Grasso, Jan, and Jessica Penne. Those are the 5 losses since that win. I mean, that's just a completely different level, really, than what Herrig can even do. Like, Herrig cannot compete at all with Grasso or Jan, definitely. So, I mean, for her to get decision losses, I'm pretty sure they were decision losses to Grasso and Jan. Because I didn't watch the Grasso fight, but I did watch the Jan fight. And to be honest, I mean, Jan is so good. Yan Xiaonan, I should clarify. That's Yan Xiaonan. She is so, so good. So for Kowalkiewicz to have a fairly close fight with her and go, do fairly well like that, you have to imagine that there's nothing that Felice Herrig is going to be able to do that's going to throw Kowalkiewicz over the edge, really. I mean, you got to think that Kowalkiewicz definitely has the edge because of that. So Felice Herrig, like I said, -120 right now. Kowalkiewicz at +100. I mean, yes, they're super close. They're both basically at the end of their career now. But Kowalkiewicz just screams out to me that she's going to be winning this fight. There's so many factors, way more factors in her direction than in Herrig's direction. So it seems bizarre to me that she's not the favorite. So this is really a perfect opportunity for everybody that's listening to this to jump on Kowalkiewicz for the +100. I'm going to be writing that down in the article there as one of my best bets. I don't normally do that, I don't normally do that with the women, especially when they're near the end of their career, because they're so unpredictable. But I got to say that Kowalkiewicz just has so much more in her direction right now that she really shouldn't be the underdog at all. The over-under, of course, is over-under 2.5 and is heavily favored in the over direction at -325. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Throw that in a parlay, you're banking that all day long. I just can't imagine Kowalkiewicz or Herrig getting a finish. I just don't see that happening. So great line for bets right there. After that, we've got Alonzo Menefield and Askar Mojarov, and that is actually one of three UFC debuts in the main card alone, which is insane, really. To have your UFC debut on the main card is insane, but to have 3 debuts on the main card is crazy. This is one of them. Alonzo Menefield, of course, we've seen a lot before. Pretty even in his UFC record, 4-3, but he's got 3 first-round finishes, and he's got losses to top contenders Devin Clark, OSP, and William Knight, which William Knight was in his last one, and it was pretty close, I gotta say. Mojarov, a lengthy MMA resume. He's sitting at 25-7 right now, which is crazy. But like a lot of similar fighters, I gotta say, that haven't made their debut yet, there's a lot of first-round finishes, but they come against people that basically have no MMA experience whatsoever, and they're usually in promotions that you've never really seen or heard of before. The only one that I had even ever really heard of much before was Titan FC. And this was actually just less than a couple of years ago, I believe. And he lost in the first round by TKO in Titan FC. So to me, this really isn't even close at all. I think Menifield is just going to run away with this. I really do. If you look at the records, it seems like Mojarov might actually have the edge in striking and power. But when you dive deeper, especially after you watch that tape, that story falls apart completely. I mean, like I said, it was Titan FC just a couple years ago. It was at light heavyweight, and he actually lost to a smaller guy. By the way, Menifield is massive. He's not a small guy here. So Mojarov lost to a smaller guy, and he was actually controlled on the ground, and he was finished by first round TKO because of that. So, I mean, Menifield, huge guy, very strong, decent at grappling, pretty good striker. So to me, this is a complete one-sided affair to me. I think we're going to be seeing a Menifield finish on this one. And if you look at the odds, I think we're going to be making a decent amount of money this week if you're going with that. If you're going with Menifield, because Menifield is actually at minus 172 right now, which, yes, he's the favorite, but that's way closer than it really should be, I think, personally. They could have even put it, way out there at minus 300 even. So plus 137 for Mojarov. I think there's just the obvious choice here is Menifield, especially after, like I said, I have watched the tape. I did see that Titan FC performance, and I've watched Menifield's last couple fights. So it just seems like a complete mismatch to me and a very rough debut for Mojarov. I'm not saying that he can't survive here, but to make your debut against Menifield, not going to go well. The over-under is over-under 1.5 rounds. The over 1.5 rounds is plus 150 right now. And the under 1.5 is minus 193. I totally see where they're coming from. And I would also probably say that it is probably going to be under that 1.5 at minus 193. But do you want to take those odds? Minus 193 is pretty high for under 1.5. I'm not sure. I might stay away from that one. But hey, if you want to even maybe, I don't know if I would throw that in a parlay. Oh, Loki's having a great time over there being an idiot. Anyway, so I might stay away from the over-under on that one. After that, back to the ladies. Poliana Botelho, Karine Silva. This is the second debut. You've got Karine Silva actually coming off of the Contender Series, making her debut in this one. In an all-Brazilian matchup. We love the Brazilians. Botelho had a promising start to her career, opened at 3-1, but dropped her last two with decisions against Luana Carolina and Jillian Robertson, mainly because of some grappling problems. Karine Silva, much less experienced, of course, making her first appearance here, of course, but she had a very, very impressive win on the Contender Series just, I believe it was in November. It looked seriously incredible. I mean, because her opponent, I can't remember her name. She was from China. Amazing wrestler, but Karine Silva actually completely dominated her and won on the ground there. Just completely dominated her on the ground. Just amazing wrestler. Seriously, so good. So good. So you've got the primarily a striker here, Botelho, and a very good wrestler in Silva. Although I do think that Botelho may have edged the win in the last one, to be honest, against Luana Carolina. She did technically lose. I kind of thought she won personally. But what we can learn from that is she clearly struggles against somebody that is larger and somebody who can wrestle. And that is really exactly what Silva is. She is very big and she can also wrestle very well. So I think Botelho is going to have some clear problems here. Also, Karine very quick too, and fairly large, which is an unusual but frighteningly good combination, of course. So with all those problems, I would have to give Silva the edge in this one. But, you know, fairly close. But yeah, you got to give her the edge on this one. And if you go to the odds, Botelho is at plus 100 and Silva minus 123. So they're still pretty, you know, neck and neck on the odds there, but in favor of Silva. And, you know, I would say rightfully so because of those style matchups. So I'm definitely going Silva on this one. Minus 123, still fantastic odds. The over-under on this one, over-under 2.5, amazingly a little lower than I would have expected, but probably because of the ground experience of Silva. So they're thinking, you know, maybe she's going to get a submission here, which isn't outside the realm of possibility, I will say. I'm thinking it's probably going to be a decision that she's just going to control Botelho, but you never know. The over-under is at minus 175 for that over 2.5. Honestly, not terrible odds. I mean, pretty close odds there. So you might want to go for that minus 175. Not crazy. But of course, I guess if you think there's going to be a submission, not insane to go for the plus 133 either. But hey, that's just me. After that, we go back to the men. We've got Mike Trisano and Lucas Almeida. Another debut, this time by Almeida. And much like Mojarov, did not compete on the Contender Series. He is coming from somewhere else. I didn't write it down. But anyway, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I don't remember where he fought last, but he actually did compete on the Contender Series, but he lost on the Contender Series. It was a close fight, and he did look very good, but he definitely did lose that fight. So already that's a bit of a red flag. If you're losing on the Contender Series and you're going against somebody who's pretty good in Trisano, you know, not necessarily a great combination there. Other than that, though, he is flawless with 13 finishes and a 13-1 record. That's for Almeida there. So, you know, he's got the record, but you got to think it's the Contender Series. You know, he couldn't get a win on the Contender Series, and he's expecting to compete with an incredible striker in Trisano, because Trisano made his debut after winning season 27 of The Ultimate Fighter. That would have been just a few years ago. And since then, he's got some pretty great wins. I mean, wins against Luis Pena, pretty good. I mean, he was cut, but he was good. He was probably cut for some other reasons, though, but he was cut. And he does fight in Titan FC now, and he's still decent. And he did beat Liudovit Klein, and Klein is very good. So, you know, that's saying a lot. And then he also does have losses. He was finished by Grant Dawson, but Grant Dawson is incredible, of course. And he went to a decision with Hakeem Dawodu, who is an incredible striker. So the fact that he could last the entire fight and compete fairly well against Hakeem Dawodu, who is a sensational kickboxer, I really just can't see that Almeida can really compete at that kind of level. So to me, I mean, yes, I think this is going to be a striker's delight, and we're going to be very entertained here. But I would just imagine that Trisano is going to edge ahead in a hard-fought decision here. I mean, Trisano's pretty big. Although Almeida is also big himself, Trisano is pretty big, and his skill is very evident, because that fight against Dawodu was actually his last fight. And again, he did look very good in that fight. He's also a decent grappler, because he did okay against Klein, who is a great wrestler. So, you know, just with that combination, plus if you watched the Contender Series, Almeida did well in the first round, came out pretty hot, but then very much slowed down quite a bit as the fight went on. And I don't know if that's something you can really fix in, you know, a few month range, because he did have a fight, and I believe that was about 3-4 months ago, after, of course, that loss on the Contender Series. So I just don't think that he can fix it that fast, especially to compete with somebody like Trisano. So I would say Trisano is fairly clearly the way to go on this one, probably by decision. Because again, I mean, you know, Almeida's never been finished. So you kind of have to expect that probably we're going to be seeing a decision here, especially again, since Trisano also usually goes to decisions anyway. So long-winded explanation of saying Trisano minus 234, go in that direction. Maybe even go for a parlay, because there's really not that many opportunities for parlays on this card, because there's a lot of very close odd lines that are fairly close. But that could be one that you could go towards. Excuse me. The over-under 2.5, minus 200 for the over, plus 154 for the under. I would say that's probably pretty fair, because we probably are going to see a decision. So minus 200, actually really not that bad to put a couple bucks on. Sprinkle a little money on that, as Yanni the Greek would say. After that, we've got the co-main. This, to me, is by far the most exciting matchup of the night. You've got Dan 50K Ige. You gotta love Dan Ige. And Movsar Ivaloev, who is also ranked. Yeah, like I said, very exciting matchup. This really could be the fight of the brawl of the night for me. Dan Ige currently ranked 10th after his losses to Emmett and Korean Zombie in his last two. He got his spot in the rankings, though. Amazing performances against Mirsad Bektic and Edson Barboza. Very good. I mean, that fight was absolutely insane to watch. I mean, all of his fights are pretty good to watch, except for maybe the Korean Zombie one. That was not close, I got to say. And we'll talk about that, why that affects this one so much. Ivaloev has only had 5 fights in the UFC, but he's held his perfect record together, sitting at 15-0. So already that probably tells you which direction you're going to lean towards Ivaloev. His most recent wins, dominant wrestling performances over Grundy, Lentz, and Dawodu. And that Dawodu one is really the clear one. That's what sold it to me, that it's like, okay, there's a very clear direction to go with on this one. I will say, you know, Ige still has, you know, it's a little closer than the odds are going to suggest here, that we'll get to in a second, because Ige's stand-up is absolutely fantastic, and he could very much land something that stumbles Ivaloev. Don't forget that. Like, he really could land something big that stumbles him and makes some problems. I don't know if he's going to finish him. Probably not. I mean, I don't think he's going to win. But, you know, could he finish him? Maybe. Could he even maybe win a decision if he keeps picking him apart at a distance? Possibly. But I think, you know, the clear difference here, obviously, is Ivaloev's wrestling. Ige struggled a lot. He struggled a lot with the wrestling of the Korean Zombie and a little bit with the wrestling of Emmett. And I mean, yes, you've got to give credit to the Korean Zombie. He's very good on the ground. But when you're talking about somebody like Ivaloev, who that's really all he does is wrestling and just absolutely smothering people on the ground, just running straight in for the takedown, for the shot there. And he did that against Dawodu. So to me, Dawodu is, I don't know if he's on the same level of Ige in the striking, but he's pretty close. He's very good. So the fact that Ivaloev just ran straight in and did that, that says pretty much all you need to know. They are both very durable, and they both have endless gas tanks, really. So to me, I think this is going to last all 3 rounds. I really do. Ige is probably going to land some great combos. So again, maybe he could edge ahead in a round or two. But Ivaloev will most likely just dominate this fight on the ground, smother Ige on the ground, make it a little boring, let's be honest, and win the fight like that. That's probably what we're going to see here. And if you go to the odds, Ige is at plus 320 and Ivaloev is at minus 434. So this is probably an opportunity where you're going to throw the parlay together. I mean, really. You can see Loki's ear there. What was I going to say? And the over under is actually over under 2.5, and minus 400 for over. Maybe a little generous there. I do tend to agree though, because neither one of them really ever gets finished. So I would say that's pretty fair. And you might even want to throw that in a parlay itself as well at minus 400. Finally, closing out the night, Alexander Volkov, Jairzinho Rozenstruik. It's why we're all here at the main event. Closing out the night, 2 ranked guys, obviously. Did I write the rankings? Yes, I did. Well, for one of them. I did not write the ranking for, I think Rose, oh yeah, it was 7 and 8, I believe. So Volkov sitting at 7th. I believe Rozenstruik is in 8th right now. I'd have to check that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Ever since his debut, I mean, he's been fighting the best Volkov we were talking about here. Absolute legend. I mean, seriously, pretty much every single person he's fought actually has been ranked at some point, I think. Pretty much, except for maybe 1 or 2 people, which is insane to say. Seriously. He's got wins over Struve, Verdum, Hardy, Harris, Tybura, and Overeem. All wins right there. And he's got losses. These are his only 3 losses in his UFC career. Lewis, Blades, and Gane. So you got to imagine. I mean, this guy is so good. Oh, of course, and Aspinall, of course. So yeah, only 4 losses in his UFC career and 2 absolute legends. Of course, I mean, he's fought is a legend because he is a legend himself. As for Rozenstruik, actually kind of a similar losses. He's lost to Ngannou, Gane, and Blades. So Blades and Gane featured in both of them there. And he's got wins over Arlovsky, JDS, Junior Dos Santos, and Sakai, and also Overeem. So he's got some pretty good wins on there himself. They're both, I would say, very evenly matched. This is a really close one to me, especially since, of course, we're talking about heavyweight. So really, either one of them could land anything at any moment and end the fight. So, of course, especially since they both enjoy striking. So you really could see that. Volkov seems to struggle early in the fights where the fighter pressures like Rozenstruik, but he's always great at shutting down offense, with the exception of Derek Lewis. That was, he did not shut it down there. Since they both fought Overeem recently, it seems like a fair point of comparison, and that's what we're going to slightly kind of lean towards here. Jairzinho struggled a bit with Overeem's wrestling, but did pick him apart on the feet slowly over the 5 rounds. Got a finish with 5 seconds left, but I'm not sure I would have finished the fight if I were the ref with 5 seconds left. I don't know if I would have done that. I'm not really sure. But to be fair, it looked like Overeem was done. But anyway, that was literally with 5 seconds left in the 5-round fight. As for Volkov, did not struggle nearly as much. Volkov came in, walked forward for most of the fight, finished Overeem in the 2nd round. Rozenstruik is probably going to come out pretty aggressive here in the opening round, maybe 2. But the cardio, I think, is going to let him down. And I'm not going to shit all over his cardio. I don't think his cardio is that bad. But you got to think Volkov really probably has some of the best cardio in the entire division. So he's not getting tired. So to me, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds, that's where Volkov will come in strong and probably edge ahead in the decision. That's what I see happening here. I think we're going to make it to the end, and I think Volkov is going to control the fight for the last 3, maybe even 4 rounds. It depends how long Rozenstruik can last at a certain pace. That's what I'm seeing here. But I do think it's going to be close. And there is a decent chance that you could see Rozenstruik maybe even win, a 3rd round on the cards there somewhere. It's going to be really close. That's what I'm seeing here. if you look at the odds, it is very close still, but they are leaning slightly towards Volkov. They've got him at minus 155 right now. Rosenstrike plus 125. So very close, but I have to go with, it's a 5-round fight. It's the main event. So I would have to imagine that Volkov, being as experienced as he is, with the cardio that he has and the stand-up skills that he has, and even a little bit of grappling too, I would say he's going to edge ahead in that decision, control the offense, and then land his own later on, maybe even early to win by decision there. And if you go towards the over-under, it is actually at over-under 3.5 rounds. So you know what I'm going to say here. I'm going towards the over. And really, at minus 134 for over 3.5 here, I would say those are pretty good odds, because Volkov doesn't really get finished. He gets finished by submissions. He tends to get finished by submissions, except, of course, for Derek Lewis. And I just don't think that Rosenstrike is capable of that same Derek Lewis massive, massive power. I just don't see it. So I don't think he can catch him like that, is what I should say, because he does have power, but Derek Lewis is just absolutely unreal. So yeah, I would just have to imagine that Rosenstrike won't be able to finish Volkov, which means that we're going to see, like I said, all 5 rounds, because I also don't think that Volkov can finish Rosenstrike. I don't think they can finish each other at all. So I really do think that we're seeing a decision here. So minus 134, over 3.5, fantastic odds. And I will hopefully remember to write that down also in the article tomorrow to include that as one of my best bets, because minus 134 in heavyweights for that, pretty good, I would say. Pretty good. Now we will quickly talk about some prelims before I talk about a couple of parlays that you might want to do. And then, of course, we'll call it a night. The card actually opens up with one of the best fights, with one of the fights that I want to talk about. And I'm not even really sure why it's the opening fight, because honestly, this could be, I don't know about a featured prelim, but maybe somewhere on there. And honestly, it probably could even replace one of the ones on the main card, to be honest, especially maybe, Botelho and Silva. You might want to do this one instead, because Blanchfield, to me, that's who it is. It's Blanchfield and JJ Aldrich. To me, both of these women are probably the future of women's MMA, especially in this division, and especially Blanchfield on this one. So I would have thought that they should have put this on the main card, maybe even at least higher on the card or something. I mean, it really deserves it. These two. Blanchfield, only 2 fights into her UFC career, but my God, has she dominated in both of those fights. Maverick was looking like an unstoppable force, I gotta say, in the division, until Blanchfield came in and just completely dominated Maverick, who is a grappler herself and a very good one. Blanchfield just completely out-wrestled, destroyed that fight. Easy decision win. And before that, I believe she scored 30-25 on multiple cards against I didn't write down who she fought before that. I want to say it might have been Sarah Alpar, possibly. I believe that may be who she fought in her debut. But either way, 30-25, 2 30-25s in her debut there. So, I mean, very much a wrestler, and an incredible wrestler at that. Of course, I rewatched the Maverick fight specifically to see how good she really was. And it was just so dominant, and just crazy to see Miranda Maverick get dominated like that. On the other side, JJ Aldrich, also very, very good. Slightly older than Blanchfield, though. She's 29. But an extensive UFC resume, a record of 7-3 here. So yeah, she's been around a while. Her last 3 fights, all decision wins. And they were all over fairly impressive people. Courtney Casey, Vanessa Demopoulos, and Jillian Robertson. Pretty good ones. But does that really stand up to Miranda Maverick? I'm not really sure, to be honest. I don't really think so. Yeah. So I mean, just what Blanchfield is doing is just on a whole other level. Unlike most women's bouts, to me, this one's going to be a blowout. You can't normally say that too much because most of the women's bouts are pretty closely fought. But to me, this is not going to be close. It's really not, because Miranda Maverick, I would say, would probably have a pretty good chance of beating Aldrich as it is, probably using the same strategy with her grappling. But Blanchfield is just going to absolutely destroy her with the wrestling, I would say. And to me, she's been so dominant. I know it's crazy to say, but I really do think that she's been so dominant that I genuinely would not be surprised if she got a title shot before she turned 25. I really believe that, because she's, I believe, 22 right now. Yeah, I think 22, probably close to 23. I really do think that within the next 2 years, she's probably going to get a title shot, because she's just that good. And of course, we want to see new people in that division, so they're kind of rotating through, trying to give new people title shots. So I would imagine that she is probably going to be in one of those in line for that kind of conversation pretty soon, especially if she just destroys Aldrich like she should in this one, and then wins a ranked one in the next one. Because I mean, she really should be ranked right now. It's kind of insane that she's not, to be honest. If she pushes the pace. Oh, actually, she does push the pace. She has good stand-up, and seriously is one of the best wrestlers I've seen recently in women's MMA. That is how good she is. So good. She should be able to get Aldrich down fairly easily and wear her down to the point where, to be honest, I think she's probably going to get her first UFC finish here. I really do. She almost finished Miranda Maverick on the ground multiple times. She clearly almost finished the other person in her debut. So to me, I mean, if she can get Aldrich down to the ground, when she gets Aldrich down to the ground, I should say, I would say she has a very good chance at getting her first UFC finish. So that's what I'm going towards here. I'm going Blanchfield by finish. I'm going confident towards the finish here. Blanchfield minus 550. Of course, massive, massive favorite here. So that's another opportunity for a parlay, of course. And Aldrich plus 375, of course. The over-under makes sense. Minus 286 for the over 2.5, plus 210 for the under 2.5. You could play it safe with the over 2.5 minus 286. I'm not opposed to that. I think that's probably the safer bet. But I will say, Blanchfield has been so dominant that I really would not be surprised. And I like I said, I'm even kind of predicting that maybe she does get a finish here over Aldrich. So plus 210, when it's that iffy, when she really, really could get a submission here or a TKO finish on the ground or something, plus 210, it really might be worth the risk. That's what I would say. You might want to do some kind of risk on this one, because there's not much money at minus 550. So maybe throw a couple of bucks on the under 2.5, just in case she gets that submission, or even actually bet on a submission win. You could even do that. Next one that I wanted to talk about, Jeff Molina, Zhalgas Zhumagulov. Amazing. I mean, there's two great flyweight fights here. Actually, technically, all three of them are flyweight. But two men's flyweights ones that are looking very, very good here. And that is this one and then the next one that I'm going to talk about. So Jeff Molina, Zhalgas Zhumagulov. To me, this is the closest fight of the night. It really is. It's going to be an explosive brawl. Really could go either way with this one. You're probably seeing a decision here. But yeah, it's going to be so close and just fireworks all around. I am so excited to see this one. I really am. Since grabbing his UFC contract on the Contender Series, Molina has been flawless with an impressive pair of wins over Aoriqi Lang and Daniel Da Silva. Zhumagulov doesn't have a great record. He sits at 1-3 in the UFC. I know it doesn't sound good. I know that. But all 3 losses have come to ranked opponents so far, which Molina is not. He lost to Paiva, which, by the way, Paiva was also fighting at bantamweight. So that tells you how big Paiva actually is. He also lost to Albazi, who is currently ranked and has seriously, I mean, he looked incredible in that fight, Albazi. And Albazi just looks good all around. He's so good. And then he lost to Manel Kape, incredible striker. He finished Zhalgas in the first round. But you know what? Zhalgas actually stumbled the incredible striker Manel Kape in the last fight. And to me, that is why I'm actually leaning in the direction of the underdog in this one, Zhalgas Zhumagulov. And you might think I'm crazy here because, again, a 1-3 record against somebody who is undefeated in the UFC so far sounds crazy. But you gotta, if you watched the fights, you'd see, Zhalgas really has something going for him, especially, like I said, he has the grappling and he also has the striking. Like I said, he stumbled Manel Kape, and he's also got a standing guillotine, I believe. I believe that was him. Was that him or was that somebody else? I can't remember. Oh, did I write it down? I do. Yeah, there. He's got the standing guillotine. I remembered. I just needed to make sure. But yeah, so Zhalgas has the standing guillotine, which is hard to do. Plus, he also stumbled Manel Kape and was doing very well on the feet. So you got to imagine that what Zhalgas is going to do, he's going to try and control Molina a little bit along the fence, but he's also going to go to a striking war with him, of course, too. Probably early on. And of course, if he gets clipped a little bit, he's probably going to turn towards the grappling. But he's just so well-rounded and so strong that I think Molina is going to have a harder time here. I really do. I think it's going to be close. Like I said, it's going to be close and it's going to be a decision, I'm sure, probably. But I've got to go with Zhalgas Zhumagulov on this one by decision. Plus, Zhalgas, his movement is insane. He's so fast, so fast. So I think also Molina is going to struggle a little bit to even get a lot of offense off. Yeah. So I think Molina is going to struggle to keep up and he's going to lose in a tight decision. That's what I think, but really could go either way on this one. The odds on this one, you've got Molina minus 180, Zhumagulov plus 145. So it is close, but I'm going with the underdog at plus 145, Zhalgas Zhumagulov, which I love saying. That is a crazy name, and I love it. The over-under is at 2.5 rounds, minus 193 for over. Definitely going in that direction. There's not too much really that tells me that either one of them is going to get finished. They're both really tough. I just don't see your finish happening, really. So that's what I'm going with. Decision on this one for the underdog, Zhalgas Zhumagulov. The final prelim that I want to talk about. Ode Osborne, Zaruk Adashev. Adashev, I believe. Oh, no, never mind. That is not his debut. I was going to say it's his debut. It's not. Yeah, Ode, another flyweight one, and absolutely amazing to watch. This is going to be another very entertaining one. Ode Osborne snagged his UFC contract on Dana White's Contender Series back in 2019, and he's actually gone even so far with 2-2, which doesn't really sound all that impressive. But when his first loss came in his debut to Brian Kelleher, who really is actually a bantamweight, and he was submitted there. So that's a pretty fair loss in his debut, I might add again. And he lost to Manel Kape. I mean, those are two pretty good losses, decent losses to have. Like, they're okay. Nobody's sweating anything on that one. Yeah, on the other side, Adashev, also fairly new, 1-2 record. Interestingly, you don't normally see this in the UFC. He's got an overall record in MMA of 4-3, which does not sound good. And it's bizarre to see in the UFC like that. But that is what his record is because he is very good at wrestling. And that's what got him into it. What are we looking at here? Oh, and he lost to Tyson Nam and Sumudarji. I believe Tyson Nam was a brutal KO, and Sumudarji was close, but ended up losing because of Sumudarji's striking. But he did turn it around with the win in his last one, and that was over Ryan Benoit. They are very similar in that they're both of their records, to be honest, seem worse than they actually are. Like, it doesn't sound good. 1-2 and 2-2 doesn't really sound all that good, but they're both very, very good. And you do not want to miss this fight. You don't want to miss any of the fights that I just talked about, actually, except for maybe, I mean, honestly, let's be honest, the the Herrig and Kovalkiewicz one could have probably done without that. But all the other ones that I mentioned looking very good. What was I going to say? They both got great skills, but Osborne seems to edge ahead just the slightest bit here. He's very quick, great striking, decent grappling, while Adashev very much slower and did struggle with the length of Sumudarji. And since Sumudarji, it's a lot of tongue twisters now, since Sumudarji is the same length as Ode Osborne and have a similar style, I would imagine that this is going to go the same way as Adashev's fight against Sumudarji, which is going to be a decision for Osborne in this case. And honestly, I think Osborne is better than Sumudarji. So it's probably going to be a slightly more one-sided, let's say. That's what I'm going with this. Yeah, so he's going to struggle with the striking, struggling to get close, which is what he needs to do. So I'm going Osborne, especially since Osborne is so quick, like I said. So going Osborne on this one. And if you look at the odds, they are very close, but it does also favor Osborne on here. Minus 186 right now, and Adashev plus 150. The over-under makes sense for flyweights. Set at 2.5. And it's actually at minus 128 right now for the over, which I think is pretty generous. I would actually say that, though, that's fantastic odds to put some money on, because I just don't really think that either one of them is going to get a finish here. You know, maybe Ode can get a TKO like Tyson Nam did against Adashev, but I think he's tough enough. He's tough enough that he should make it to the end. That's what I'm seeing here. Also, he's probably going to get some grappling in there, make it a little dirty. So he's probably going to last a little bit longer than that. So I'm thinking over 2.5 at minus 128. Pretty good odds for that. And Ode Osborne at minus 186 is fantastic. So let's look at a couple of parlays before we go. Blanchfield, no brainer. Obviously going with that. Fakhretdinov is at minus 286 right now. I don't even think that he's going to win this fight. It's so close. Throw that one out. Do not put that in the parlay. I know we put most of the minus 200 ones together normally. Do not put Fakhretdinov on there. I hope people are listening, and I hope people see the article tomorrow and don't put money on that, because it's pretty iffy, honestly. The underdog of Michailidis does look a little bit better going into this. But anyway, we won't talk about that. Blanchfield, that's my one pick so far. Scrolling. Saint Denis might even be a good idea to put in, but I'm going to stay away from that at minus 163. So far, still just Blanchfield. Maybe put Osborne in there. Minus 186. You might want to do that. Could do that. That's a second one. Then we've got Menefield. Menefield at minus 172. I think that's such a clear win. I find it bizarre that it's that close. Minus 172. Fantastic for a parlay. So we've got Blanchfield, Menifield, and possibly, what did I say? Possibly Osborne. And then Trisano, another great option in the parlay there. Ivaloev, obvious addition to the parlay. And I would stay away from the main event in the parlay too, because Rosenstrike does have an outside chance to get either the decision or maybe a finish. So I'm going to stay away from that in the parlay. But Ivaloev, Trisano, Menifield, and possibly Osborne, and then Blanchfield for sure. Those are my parlay picks for the night, and that is it for me. Get rid of that banner there. That's it for me today. So next week, of course, we'll be talking about The Ultimate Fighter again. We'll be talking about this week's card. And of course, my God, we'll be talking about the pay-per-view, which is next Saturday. Oh my God, I can't wait for that pay-per-view. Singapore, right? I think, isn't it? Yeah, that's a Singapore card. I can't wait to see that. So many good fights. You love a pay-per-view too. Can't wait. So that's what's on deck for next week. If you want to hear about any of the other sports, Area 51 has got you covered. If you want to hear about my bonuses for the night or anything else that I've got to say on Twitter, Instagram, whatever, that is also below. And we've also, we're partnered with Bet99, so you can get an instant sign-up bonus if you hit that link also below. And it's featured in the outro on the way out here. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next week. I'm quickly searching for my outro video. Anyway, thanks for watching. Had another great time here. And we've got some good picks for Saturday. Hopefully we cash in big. I will see you next time.